So JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Eyes of Heaven came out in 2016, and everyone was like,
it's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Released just 2 years after All-Star Battle and developed by the same studio, Eyes of Heaven shared a lot of assets with its predecessor, being built on the same engine and uses the same models. Although depending on who you ask, could say it looks a bit nicer, being released on PlayStation 4, has a brighter color palette, and a whole lot of bloom for some reason. Seriously, this whole campaign feels like I'm seeing my dead wife in a lore-establishing dream. The main purpose of this game was to reach a more casual audience and appeal to more fans, introducing a new style of gameplay being a tag team arena fighter that allows you to explore the stages and interact with gimmicks, and goes pretty heavy on the fan service with its dual heat attacks and story mode, which was the biggest selling point for the game. Having an original cinematic story mode that told a bizarre multiverse tale where all of the Joestars and Speedwagon needed to travel across universes collecting corpse parts and come together to defeat Heaven-Attained Dio, which is Araki approved, sort of. He didn't write the story, but he did act as a supervisor. Upon release, this game was quite divisive, often criticized for its clunky gameplay and lack of depth when compared to All-Star Battle, and some people really didn't like the original story. Although admittedly, I'm a big fan of Eyes of Heaven. It was the backdrop for a lot of my videos back in the day, and generally I just thought it was really fun and liked all of the unique character interactions. So after seeing the success of All-Star Battle R, and as we approach what seems to be the next JoJo animation cycle, it's got me wondering if we could be getting an Eyes of Heaven R. And throughout this video, you'll be seeing a lot of gameplay captured by Vish Kujo, who's done an amazing job at archiving almost every bit of content from the JoJo games. So what really sparked this whole discussion was seeing a few weeks ago that out of nowhere, Eyes of Heaven got a new update, its first update in 9 years, with patch notes saying that they made bug fixes in story and battle mode, as well as improvements have been made to stability and usability. Which just seems bizarre that people at CyberConnect 2 are for whatever reason working on Eyes of Heaven in 2025. Obviously, they didn't add any new content or anything, but it would appear from the patch notes that they're polishing up the game. So looking at the situation optimistically, of course, this makes me wonder if the developers are getting the game ready and optimized for a multi-platform re-release like we saw with R. And as previously mentioned, All-Star Battle and Eyes of Heaven are very similar games. We saw a lot of EOH content used in R, like the new stages and characters. So a lot of the work they put into R with the updated visuals, new content, and multi-platform capabilities could be reused in an updated Eyes of Heaven. And from Bandai's perspective, the game publisher re-releasing this game could be very financially viable, as like the original All-Star Battle, it was a PlayStation exclusive. It still is. So just getting Eyes of Heaven on Xbox, Steam, Switch 2 now, just as a port would certainly net a return on investment and target a potential market that never played the original, which has unique selling points that differentiate it from R. It's also no secret that R sold really well, at least for a licensed anime fighter, breaking into the top 10 sellers on PlayStation and Switch on the week of its release, and was supported through 2 season passes. And looking at its Steam page, it's one of Bandai's best received anime games in terms of sales and reception. As you can generally estimate Steam sales based off reviews, typically it's around 20 to 60 sales per review, a higher ratio for indie games and lower for AAA. And All-Star Battle R has more than double the reviews of nearly every other Bandai anime game of this decade, only being surpassed by One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 and Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which is heavy competition for an enhanced remaster of a PS3 game, which was most likely a lot less expensive to develop. So you'd have to imagine that Bandai is at least considering an Eyes of Heaven R, as they could utilize the same team from CyberConnect that did ASBR and capitalize on the animation cycle. As many of you may already know, there's this little event called JoJo Day happening in less than 10 days now, which will most likely announce the Steel Ball Run anime. And as we saw, ASBR was specifically developed with the animation cycle in mind. Released on the same day as Stone Ocean's second batch of episodes, they dropped new characters, Weather and New Moon Pucci, on the same day as the third batch, and the game's collector's edition was all Jolene themed. So if we are heading towards a Part 7 anime, the timing would be pretty perfect to begin development now and release the game sometime in the middle of Steel Ball Run, which would also be great timing because the story of Eyes of Heaven has a lot of Steel Ball Run elements. Funny Valentine is an important character who acts as this double agent and involves the Joestars traveling between universes collecting corpse parts. So the marketing for the game could really benefit off of the hype of the anime like they did with R, and you can't deny that a Johnny and Gyro figure in a collector's edition would go pretty crazy. So that's all of my supporting evidence as to why I think this game is possible and even likely. The timing works out, it wouldn't be particularly difficult to develop, not like a whole new game, it could be profitable, and someone or a team was working on the game recently. So now let's get into what I would actually like to see from this game if it happens, and the improvements that could be made. So first off is carrying over a lot of the core concepts and content from ASBR. This includes fundamental improvements and general quality of life, like adjustments to combat and movement that just make the game feel a bit better to play. Although, Eyes of Heaven at its core is always going to be a little clunky, so I don't think they could substantially improve the gameplay, rather just make everything feel more responsive and maybe speed it up a bit. I'd also like to see them continue making the games unified with the anime, where we saw in R, they updated all of the characters who had since been animated to be the same voice as the anime, as well as changing some of the base color palettes, so all of that I'm okay with. Then we have the additional content from R, like the new stages and fighters, which should be included in an EOHR, with modified movesets to fit the arena style. Which might sound like asking a lot, but there's actually only 8 characters added to R, not in the original EOH. Well, 9 if you include Bao, but 8 new characters. So expecting them to be transferred over isn't that crazy, especially if the game is going to be somewhere in between a remake and remaster like R was, and that game added 19 new fighters, most being from EOH, so because the models already exist, I'd say 8 new fighters would be well within expectations. Although I'm not exactly sure how Prosciutto and Pesci would work in the arena style, so maybe they'll have to split them into 2 characters, but hey, then they could have a dual heat attack. So pretty much everything good about All-Star Battle R can come on over, and with those new fighters, they could do a couple new dual heat attacks. You have Keicho and Okuyasu, Abakio and Bruno, Foo Fighters and anyone from the Part 6 cast, and maybe even Joshu and Toru team up where Joshu is controlled by Wonder of You. Although ideally we would get more Part 8 characters, I think it's finally time we set the Yotsuyu model free. Next up is a feature that was sorely missing from the original game, and in my opinion, absolutely needs to be included in a remaster, as it's a make it or break it feature for a lot of players, and that is split screen local co-op for story and battle mode. I cannot tell you how disappointed I was when I first bought this game, thinking, it's a fighter, obviously it's gonna have local co-op, literally having a second controller in my friend's hand, only to realize that when you go to battle mode, you have the option to play by yourself, or not play the game at all, which never felt good in a 2 versus 2 game, always being by yourself, and since the online was broken as usual, it essentially made it single player only. And the painful thing is that the game did have split screen coded into it. There was a glitch found in the second demo that activates it, and it had proper tracking for your opponent. So it was entirely possible, but cut for some reason. So for me, local co-op, #1 priority. Either split the screen or do a Jump Force style camera that zooms in and out to show all players. But with 4 characters and large stages with verticality, I don't really see that working, so I think split screen is the best option, and could even open up the possibility for 3 and 4 players locally. Sure, they'd have to adjust and resize all of the HUD elements, maybe separate the health bars, and it would be a little cramped, but that's infinitely a better solution than no co-op at all. And on the topic of new features, it would also be great to have more game modes like 1 versus 1 and 4-player free-for-alls. So everything aforementioned is what I think would be best for the game and necessary to establish it as a proper enhanced remaster. So now we just have my personal wish list, not what I expect, but what I think would be pretty cool. And really, my only ask is Part 9 representation. Jodio, Dragona, Paco, even Charming Man, that would be so amazing. I left out Usagi, as so far he's not much of a fighter and his stand is kind of the tactician of the group, but everyone else has had a decent amount of fights since the part started, at least enough to develop a moveset and come up with some dual heat attacks that combo Jodio and Dragona, or Jodio and Paco, or even Jodio and Giorno, where they're using Life Giver and Rain together. That would easily be top 5 dual heat attacks. And for the stage, we have a ton of solid options. They could do South Kane Street, the Villa, Hualalai. Any of those I would be down for and would look beautiful in game. But I can also see the concern that it might be too early to include Part 9, knowing that their movesets will eventually be outdated, resulting in another Josuke situation not having his full abilities. Which I would say is another hope for this game. Finally update Josuke, give him Go Beyond, he deserves it. But after all, it is a video game, and I would have rather had Josuke in the game back in the day as he was, rather than not at all, and I think the same for Jodio, because it would be fun and have every part represented, and I think that's what matters most. And JoJo Lands already has more source material to work with than the original Josuke in All-Star Battle, and Jodio does not have amnesia, so he could be more accurately characterized. But the reason this is on the wish list is because I don't think they would actually go in and add Part 9 to the story of the game. So just adding Jodio as a fighter but being absent from the campaign might make things feel a bit disconnected and confusing to someone not familiar with the original game or when Part 9 started. But then again, this would be a game for fans of the manga, so it really should be considered, as he was too early for All-Star Battle R, and including every part would really make it feel like the Smash Ultimate of JoJo games. So if we take the 8 new fighters from R, adapt them to the new combat style, and throw in a couple JoJo Lands reps, I think that would create a really amazing and exciting roster for a new game. And honestly, I would expect more if it were to coincide with the release of a Steel Ball Run anime. You'd think they'd want to add some more Part 7 fighters, like maybe Soundman or Sandman, Hot Pants, Weka Pipo. How funny would it be if when you're fighting against Weka Pipo and Wrecking Ball, it just blacks out the left side of your screen? That would be a 10 out of 10 gimmick, even if very annoying. So besides just new fighters, I do enjoy Eyes of Heaven's base gameplay and wacky stories, so those are really all of the changes and additions I'd like to see. But of course, I do want to hear and discuss what you guys would like to see from a potential Eyes of Heaven R in the comments, and see some suggestions maybe I didn't consider. So thank you all so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and I'll talk to y'all real soon in a new video. Counting down the days till JoJo Day. We're so close, so I'll see you guys soon.